Good morning, everybody, and happy Friday. And I want to kick off today's class by showing you a video called The Bystander Effect. This video is in a real high school by students, created by students, and it's to show you how people react when somebody is laying in the hallway and appears to be unresponsive. So let's watch it. And what I want you to think about is I just want you to pay attention and observe what the students are doing, what the teachers are doing, and just everybody's reaction. So here we go.
The bystander effect is a phenomenon in which the greater the number of people are present, the less likely people are to help a person distressed. We went around Massac and asked the question, do you think you would help someone that looked passed out on the ground?
Yeah. Yeah, I would have helped someone that would pass out on the ground. I mean, we obviously need help.
Okay, so what I want us to do now is I want us to talk about these questions. So I want you to go ahead and I'm going to read these questions through, and then you can pause the video, please. And I would like you to discuss these as a class. So, what do you think you would have done in this situation? Would you have helped or just walked by the person laying in the hallway? Why? Question number 2. Why do you think What do you think are the reasons why people did not help? So, if Mr. Schmiegel would go ahead and pause this video and then have you guys have a couple minutes to think and then do a round robin share of answering each of those questions. When you come back together, we are going to read chapter 9. Okay, welcome back. And we are now going to read chapter 9 in Warriors Don't Cry. And what I want you guys to focus on during the reading of chapter 9 is think about the ways that Danny is being an upstander and saying or doing things that is not part of his official job as a soldier, but that he does anyway to help Melba. Share these out after the reading if there's time. So, again, you're thinking about how Danny is being an upstander. So, at this time, we are going to read, just turning my video back on. There I am. We're going to read chapter 9. And again, I want you to think about think about this prompt over here as we're reading. Okay, here we go. If you please open your books to page 107. Pay attention, make sure you're sitting up, eyes are open, following along with me as I'm reading the text. It's a short one. Overhead, the helicopter was engaged in its roaring flutter. I relaxed a bit because I was, by the second day, familiar with the military routine of our ride to Central. I allowed myself to become hypnotized by the sight of soldiers executing their duties. I asked Sarge if our escorts in the jeeps felt as odd as we did about being propped up there with those big guns mounted in front of them just to take us to school. Nope, he said. We do what we're told. Danny was waiting for me near the front door. We nodded to each other as I began the long trip up to my homeroom. The early morning hecklers, the early morning hecklers, I apologize. The early morning hecklers were full of energy. One girl walked up close behind me, getting between Danny and me. I didn't look back. Instead, I quickened my pace. She started walking on my heels, and when I turned to face her, she spit at me. I ducked and scampered out of her way. To keep my focus, I began saying the Lord's Prayer. Hey, Melba, pay attention to what you're doing. Page 108. Watch out, Danny shouted as a group of boys bumped straight into me. One of them kicked me in the shins so hard I fell to the floor. A second kick was delivered to my stomach. Danny stood over me, motioning them to move away. Other soldiers made their presence known, although they kept their distance. I struggled to my feet. More white students gathered around and taunted me, applauding and cheering. The N-word's down. Stand tall, Danny whispered. Let's move out. Why didn't you do something? I asked him. I'm here for one thing, he said impatiently, to keep you alive. I'm not allowed to get into verbal or physical battles with these students. As some of the students continued their catcalls, I fought back tears and headed down the stairs to the principal's office. Did any adult witness this incident? The woman clerk asked in an unsympathetic tone. I mean, did any teacher see these people do what you said? Yes, ma'am. The soldiers. They don't count. Besides, they can't identify the people you're accusing. No, I didn't see any adults other than the soldiers, I answered, feeling the pain in my shin and my stomach. Well, in order to do anything, we need an adult witness. Yes, ma'am. Those were the words my mouth said because that's what I had been told was appropriate to say. But another part of me wanted to shout at her and ask why she didn't believe me or care enough to ask whether or not I needed medical help. Page 109. I think you'd better get to class, unless you want us to call an ambulance, she said in a sarcastic tone. I turned to walk out the door. It had hurt my feelings as much to report the incident to her as to live through it. I could see Danny's face. His expression was blank, but his posture was so erect and his stance so commanding that no one would dare to challenge him. Seeing that made me think about my own posture. I had to appear confident and alert. I squared my shoulders, trying not to show how frightened and timid I really felt. I told myself I had to be like a soldier in battle. I couldn't imagine a 101st trooper crying or moping when he got hurt. During the rest of the day, I forced myself to endure annoying little pranks that distracted me and made me nervous, but did not really hurt me. After the ride home in the convoy, with a fun game of verbal ping pong with my friends, the usual group of news reporters once again greeted us at Mrs. Bates's house. That night, I wrote in my diary, "It's hard being with Little Rock white people. I don't know if I can do this integration thing forever. It feels like this is something people do for only a little while. I want to run away now. I want a happy day." The next morning, after a full night's sleep, I felt fresh and new, and the ride with Sarge and the others was a real tonic to start my day. "Smile, it's Friday," Danny said, greeting me at the front door of the school. Fewer soldiers accompanied us up the front stairs. Their absence meant the defiant chants and hateful, page 110, words grew much louder. When I stepped inside the school, the soldiers were not as visible as they had been the day before, but I thank God that they were still there. "I'm going to be in the background today. They're trying to figure how y'all will get along without us being up real close," Danny said. I nodded to him as though I felt okay with his announcement. I wanted to say, "Please, please don't leave my side," but I didn't. I felt myself beginning to rely on him, but I didn't know what else to do. I had never before felt such fear. It was an unfamiliar position. Me, counting on a white man to defend me against other white people determined to hurt me. And yet I was resigning myself to the fact that, for the moment, I had no choice but to depend on Danny and God. As with any high school on Friday, the anticipation of the weekend brought excitement, and this was a special Friday for Central High student body. The occasion for all the hoopla was a big football game that night with Baton Rouge, their arch rival. People had been lingering about the stairwells, cheering and waving pom poms, making those areas particularly hazardous for the 9 of us. The stairwells were huge, open caverns that spiraled upward for several floors, providing ample opportunity to hurl flying objects, dump liquids, or entrap us in dark corners. As I descended the stairwell, it dawned on me that except for Danny, I was almost alone. There should have been many more people around because it was a class break. "Look out, Melba, now!" Danny's voice was so loud that I flinched. "Get down!" he shouted again as what appeared to be a flaming stick of dynamite, page 111, whizzed past and landed on the stair just below me. Danny pushed me aside as he stamped out the flame and grabbed it up. At breakneck speed, he dashed down the stairs and handed the stick to another soldier who sped away. Stunned by what I had seen, I backed into the shadow on the landing, too shocked to move. "You don't have time to stop. Move out, girl." Danny's voice sounded cold and uncaring. I suppose that's what it meant to be a soldier, to survive. After gym class, Danny met me in the hall with some unfortunate news. "You're going to your first pep rally," he said, concern on his face. Going to a pep rally was rather like being thrown in with the lions to see how long we could survive. A pep rally meant 2,000 students in a huge room with endless opportunity to mistreat us. As I climbed the stairs, I longed to sprint to the front door and escape. "They won't allow me to go in with you," Danny whispered, "but I'll be somewhere outside here." I didn't respond. I was too preoccupied with finding a safe route into the rally. Nothing had frightened me more than suddenly being folded into the flow of that crowd of white students as they moved toward the auditorium. Maybe it was because they were all so excited that I got in and to my seat without much hassle. Once settled, I was delighted that Thelma was sitting only a few feet away. Nevertheless, I couldn't relax because I was crammed into the dimly lit room among my enemies, and I knew I had to keep watch every moment. I ignored the activity on stage in favor of keeping my guard up. Page 112. Over the next 20 minutes, I worked myself into a frenzy, anticipating what might happen. My stomach was in knots and my shoulder muscles like concrete. I decided I had to settle myself down. I repeated the 23rd Psalm. All at once, everybody was standing and singing the school song, "Hail to the old gold, hail to the black." Some students were snickering and pointing at me as they sang the word black, but I didn't care. It was over and I was alive and well and moving out of the auditorium. Suddenly, I was being shoved backward toward the corner very hard. A strong hand knocked my books and papers to the floor as 3 or 4 football player types squeezed me into a dark corner beneath the overhang of the auditorium balcony. One of them pinned me against the wall. Someone's forearm pressed hard against my throat, choking me. I couldn't speak. I could hardly breathe. We're gonna make your life hell, N-word. You're all gonna go screaming out of here, taking those N-word loving soldiers with you. Just as suddenly as I had been pinned against the wall, I was released. I stood still for a moment, holding on to my throat, gasping, trying to catch a good breath. I stooped to pick up my things, careful to keep a watch around me. I stumbled back into the flow of the crowd. I couldn't stop coughing, and my throat felt as though I would never speak again. In the distance, I saw Danny standing in the hallway facing the door of the auditorium. What's the matter? Some guy tried to choke me, I whispered in a raspy voice. And you did nothing? Page 113. What could I do? Talking hurt my throat. You've got to learn to defend yourself. You kids should have been given some training in self defense. Too late now, I said. It's never too late. It takes a warrior to fight a battle and survive. This here is a battle if I've ever seen one. I thought about what Danny had said as we walked to the principal's office to prepare to leave school. I knew for certain something would have to change if I were going to stay in that school. Either the students would have to change the way they behaved, or I would have to devise a better plan to protect myself. My body was wearing out real fast. Later that evening, after Grandma put a warm towel on my throat, I fell into bed, exhausted. In my diary, I wrote, after 3 full days inside Central, I know that integration is a much bigger word than I thought. And that is the reading of chapter 9. Again, please pause the video at this time and talk about the ways that you saw Danny perform as an upstander for saying things or doing things that went beyond him just being a soldier. Also, after that, I am holding off. I did not assign the study guide. We are going to complete that in class the week after break. So the Monday and Tuesday after break, it's going to be an in-class assignment, the study guide. And then our test on chapters 1 through 9 will be the following, or that, yeah, that Friday. Or I may push it off until the following Wednesday, actually, to give us a full week to study. So yeah, so it won't be the Wednesday we get back from break. It'll be the following Wednesday, and it'll be a virtual test. If you have any questions, please make sure you have submitted the 3 assignments that are currently on third marking period. It was the vocabulary activity, the Valentine's, the virtual Valentine, and the quiz. So please make sure all of those assignments are in, and I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful break. I miss you guys, and I will see you after break. Take care.